One of my viewers asked me, why haven't I made a video about the Supreme Court in the New York case? Be it that it is December 2nd already happened. I already made a video about the Supreme Court and this whole New York case and the whole concept of mootness that the New York City is basically trying to pull, on the Supreme Court. And look, this is how I feel about the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court moves entirely too goddamn slow. Point blank, period. Okay, and what the left has done is they're using the slowness, the snail pace of the Supreme Court when it comes to major decisions like this, which has taken decades. Right, it was 10 years ago that you had Heller, and then now you got to sit there and wait. You got a Supreme Court justice are living and dying and all that other stuff. Some people might think that it's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on whether the court is leaning left or right. But I can't believe that the Supreme Court is simply going to allow this precedent to be set that when it comes to constitutional rights or laws, and again, the Second Amendment is the only thing that's treated like this. As Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has pointed out, the Second Amendment is treated like a pariah. And basically, it's like there's this avoidance to expand the Second Amendment, which is an inevitability, be it the fact that the vast majority of states in the United States, I think, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's over like 38 to 40 states or something like that, are basically shall issue, right? And then you have this whole may issue concept, which is a big issue. Again, there's several issues: the magazine bans, the concealed carry being may issue, not shall issue, and assault weapons bans and things like that, right? So those are the three biggies, right? But again, it should be recognized that there is zero confidence in liberal states protecting the constitutionality of the Second Amendment. And what you're seeing coming from the New York court and or not the New York court, the New York states like New Jersey, California, these blue states, the precedent that is being set in the Supreme Court is basically this. So New York gets to pass, or any of these liberal states get to pass, as unconstitutional of a law as possible when it comes to as the most restrictive, draconian form of gun control, while at the same time with this fake smile of, we respect the Second Amendment, right? So they're able to pass the most restrictive laws possible, which virtually in New York, you don't have a Second Amendment. Aside from the cost, it being cost prohibitive for most people, especially those living in high crime areas who are poor and impoverished, to be able to buy a firearm to defend themselves, because you got stupid things like permisses and firearms ID cards and all this other nonsense, which is basically designed to price people out of the market, right? When it comes to anything else, right, people would recognize this as being discriminatory through economics. But it's real funny how when it comes to race, it's recognized you can't discriminate on the premise of race and creed and religion and all that, but you can discriminate on the basis of economics, right? Economics tied to a constitutional right, right? So in other words, if New York said it's $1,000 for a permit, or $500 for a permit in New York, and you can't afford that, then you can't exercise your Second Amendment rights. If you can't scrounge up $500 just to apply, you can be denied. But if you can't come up with the $500, well, guess what? You don't even get to apply. Therefore, your rights are denied. And for some strange reason, it's as though the Supreme Court or any of the other courts don't recognize that. On top of that issue, there's the big issue and the heart of the issue and the core of the issue, which is the precedent that is being sent is basically that the New York and New Jersey and California and Connecticut and Massachusetts and all these states can pass as unconstitutional laws as they want. And then again, use the snail pace of the Supreme Court and all the process and all the litigation, and you got to go to the state court, and then you got to go to the federal court, then you got to go and you got to petition all the way up to the Supreme Court, right? And then when it gets up to the Supreme Court, what New York essentially has done with this whole city ordinance, and they go, oh shit, the Supreme Court's going to look at it. Oh, let's change the law and make it moot so that there is no there's no none of this law gets the light of scrutiny held upon it. Then they go to the court, the Supreme Court, and they say, oh, well, it's moot. The defendants, they got everything that they wanted, which they didn't get everything that they wanted. Because if they got everything that they wanted, they would have had, all their rights and being able to be a free state, just like the majority of other states out here. You go to the police station, you get fingerprinted, you're not a criminal, you get your concealed carry license, and then you're able to go to the gun store and you buy whatever firearm you want to buy, and then you take it back to your humble abode, or you put it on your hip or whatever, and you're able to defend yourself, not just inside your home, but outside your home. Right? And travel freely and whatever. Again, you're a law-abiding citizen, you're not a criminal, so you can move about as you wish. Right? That would ideally be what these people wanted, right? But it's like the Supreme Court is asking them, okay, you got all you wanted. No, that's not all they wanted. But when dealing with a city like New York, when dealing with a state like New York, that's pretty much all you can hope for, because again, the Supreme Court doesn't have the courage to freaking, lay down the law on cities and states like New York and say, hey, you can't do this. Because all they're basically doing is, okay, the Supreme Court drags its feet. We're going to, all this litigation, all this process to challenge an unconstitutional law. Then when they finally get to the Supreme Court, they say, oh, well, we changed the law. Oh, so it's moot. Okay. Oh, if this isn't all they wanted, well, then that's a separate case. They got to go back down to the lower courts and challenge that and challenge the state and then challenge the federal courts, and then get all the way back up to the Supreme Court again so that we can do it all over again. And again, right before it gets to the Supreme Court, what is New York going to do? They're going to narrowly change the law, just that one little narrow aspect of the law. And then so that it's moot now because we changed that one thing. So in other words, it's like the way that you petition to go to the Supreme Court, you have to be very focused about what your grievance is and what you want is. Even though you want a bigger, broader picture, you gotta be very focused. And it's just this whole game of like cat and mouse. Right, because chances are, there's plenty of cases that the Supreme Court could take up, but they're not taken up. There's plenty of cases that are much broader when it comes to the Second Amendment, and they're not taking it up. You know what I mean? So again, New York didn't expect the Supreme Court to take up this case. It was a very narrow and specific thing. But it's like, is that what it's going to be? Is it so when it comes to the Second Amendment, it's just you can only incrementally get the laws changed and petitioned to the Supreme Court, and then again the state that you're doing it against is just going to change the law, say, oh, it's moot, they have nothing to argue about, we changed the law, and then on every little thing you're going to have to do that, and they're going to say, oh, we got to take it all the way back to the federal courts, oh, we're going to hit the reset button on the Xbox, and you got to go all the way back to the beginning and go through the process again, because that's a separate issue. Oh, you want to be able to stop at your mom's house? Well, that's a separate issue. So now we allowed you to drive outside of the state in the most direct path possible. Oh, but you want to stop at your mom's house? Well, you got to go back to the federal courts and then basically petition for that, and then go to the state court, then go to the federal court. Then hopefully after 10 years, the Supreme Court takes it up again, and then the Supreme Court will say, okay, we're going to look at it, and then New York goes, oh shit, and then they go, oh well. We'll change the law. Well, it's mute. Yes, we made it so that you can travel to your... And I'm saying and 10 years has already passed. You see what I'm saying? 10 years has already passed. Maybe some of the conservative Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas or Alito, whoever, they've already died. They've already passed away and whatnot. So the Supreme Court is constantly changing. So nothing gets done. And this is the game that the Supreme Court is literally allowing New York to play. This is the game that they're allowing them to play. They're allowing the New York to take advantage of the sluggish pace of litigation, the sluggish pace in which New York, the Supreme Court examines cases and basically, make laws that are being challenged moot so that they don't get held up to the light of scrutiny. I mean, if that isn't the most tyrannical thing I've ever heard in my life, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. If that isn't the most just the most blatantly disgusting way of playing the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, again, I know that they still got to vote on it, just make the decision in June or July or whatever of next year. But I'm saying for these to be the smartest and most brightest minds in the world. These are the type of people that can see all of the tricks of the trade, and for them to basically allow this to happen. I'm saying if they allow this to happen, we no longer live in America. We no longer. To allow this to happen is the equivalent of the Dred Scott case. It was just a horrible decision, that basically left a blemish on the Supreme Court. And this also would leave a blemish on the Supreme Court. So anytime you want to challenge something, again, we'll just make it mute. We'll just make it moot. It's moot. Right? And again, I don't have the greatest confidence that the Supreme Court is going to take up any of these other cases. The 2nd, the 3rd, and 9th Circuit Court, they have blatantly, just ignored the Heller decision, just blatantly. You don't have a constitutional right. They just allow, the magazine ban. They allow the assault weapons ban. They allow the denial of people to be able to carry a firearm, outside the home, regardless of the fact that the majority, in the name of public safety. You know what I'm saying? That's the equivalent of these dirty cops who go out here and they're reckless and they're careless and they're negligent and they shoot unarmed people, namely black people, and then they always go, I was in fear of my life. So I was in fear of my life is the be all end all. And public safety, in the name of public safety, is the be all end all for violating people's Second Amendment rights. The reality of the world is, if you live in a free society, people have the ability to make free decisions. That's good or bad, right? Unless we want to live in China where it's Big Brother and they got the freaking cameras all over the place and they're giving people social scores on, who they are, what they do, and how they interact with people and all that. Unless we want to live in a society like that where you're constantly being monitored and watched, that's what liberals are advocating for. Even when I'm talking to my African American brethren, I'm like, how do you not see this? How do you not see this? How do you not see when Senator Palpatine turns into a Sith Lord? How do you not see that? You see what I'm saying? Like that's literally what's going on. And when it comes to many African Americans, many of us are like, we don't even realize that we turned into Sith Lords. We going to the dark side. We like Anakin Skywalker. I'm coming in there like Mason Windu with the purple lightsaber, like, yo, he need to go. We gotta arrest his ass. No, not when it comes to the Democrats. And then all of a sudden, I got black people, putting lightsabers on me because I'm trying to arrest Senator Palpatine. Because, he's in charge of the Galactic Senate, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, do you not see what he's doing? And I'm talking about the liberals. Do you not see what the liberals are doing? And I'm saying this just completely opens up the door for, black people still got a lot of stuff that they got to go through in America when it comes to social injustice and everything else like that, and unconstitutional laws and stop and frisk and all that other type of stuff. And they're letting it, again, this is how I see it. It's just like with YouTube. Colin Flattery is a racist. Jared Taylor is a racist, right? Even though they want to call themselves white preservationists. Let them speak. Because if you shut them down, it's only a matter of time before my voice or other black people's voices get shut down, right? When it comes to the violation of constitutional rights on one end. Again, all in the name of public safety, or all in the name of, the cop was in fear of his life or whatever. Again, then in the other direction, it could also be abused. Not to say that Republicans can't abuse, by doing the same thing. There was a speech that Mr. Gunzinger posted of a guy. He was in the military or whatever, and he basically said the same thing. He basically said that that it on both sides. It's like they don't mind violating constitutional rights as long as it's convenient to their party. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when people get so red and they get so blue with it that they just completely ignore when they don't even check their own side. Like, when you get to a point in politics when you see your side do something blatantly unconstitutional or blatantly un-American, and you're just so blue or you're just so red that you won't even check your own side, like we gone too far. Like, you talking Civil War at that point. You're not even being reasonable at that point. You're foaming at the mouth because you hate the other side so much that you're not even being reasonable anymore. And again, there's no objectivity to what is going down because, hey, that's my side. It's like, wait a minute, man, we don't do that here. Like, you crossing the line, you turn it into what you claim the other side is. And that's what I see with the politics and the court systems and the liberals and all that other stuff. Look, gun control is not about public safety. It is about people control. That's what it is about. And again, with the history that African Americans have in America, with the system of white supremacy and racism that is well freaking documented, it blows my literal mind to sit there and watch and witness all the black people that I see over there with the Democrats supporting their own disarmament in a nation that they want to claim is one of the most racist nations in the world, especially towards black people. And then they do little bullshit to try to appease us. Oh, look, a black Miss Universe or whatever. Like, I'm like, as though that's going to change the European beauty standard or something. As though all of a sudden we're going to see nothing but black women on the cover of magazines and whatnot. I'm like, bitch, please. You see, so like when I see black people going for the okie doke, we're supposed to be the most woke people. We're supposed to be the people with the most awareness, right? Double consciousness, right? While everybody else is walking around, just oblivious, right? We're supposed to be aware of these things. We know the dog whistles, we know the coded language, but for some reason, when it comes to Democrats, we go full retard. All of a sudden, we don't see the tyranny. We don't see, the subtle bigotry or the backdoor bigotry. When they pass any of these gun laws, you want to sit there and say, oh, the Republicans are racist, which, yes, a lot of them are. But when you see these backdoor gun laws and stuff like that, who do you think they're going to be policing? Whose doors do you think they're going to be kicking in? They're not going to be kicking in white folks' doors. Even if the white folks are Republican, they're not going to be kicking in their doors. They're going to be kicking in black people's doors. Again, I see Republicans and Democrats as nothing more than the right arm and the left arm of the system of white supremacy. It's all the same to me. At the end of the day, they still want to come off as, oh, we're benevolent and it's not about race or color or creed. We're all Americans and everything. But when you get down to the nitty gritty of the politics and the economics and the policing and stuff like that, you see that there's a clear bias there. You can see it. Unless you just want to be, freaking blind, you can see it. So when it comes to black people should be the most objective, like we should be the check on everything, seriously speaking. We should be like, oh, wait a minute now. Whoa, wait a minute now. But many of us we've been on the plantation for so long. We've drank the Kool-Aid for so long, that, we're just oblivious to the things that sooner or later, this stuff is going to come back to bite us in the ass. Sooner or later. Again, you got black men that are just all up in prison for nonviolent felonies, right? And that's in these liberal cities, right? You say, hey, Democrats, you know, can we get some economic opportunities, some jobs, some factories or whatever? Oh, no, we can't do that. I'll tell you what we can do. Create more gun control laws and lock more niggas up and throw them in jail and throw away the key. Right? That's what they do. Right? You got black men, you know, they're in a high crime area. They're in a liberal state, a liberal city. Oh, we don't issue permits. You know, you have to have a justifiable need, a good cause. And they're in a high crime area, right? And they don't want to get robbed. They don't want to get carjacked. They don't want to get you know, have you know, get involved in some altercation, and the drug dealer who's walking around with a gun illegally, you know, has a gun, or maybe, you know, their brother is drug dealing, and they got to worry about gang members coming after them, even though they don't have anything to do with drug dealing. And they can't protect themselves. And then if they do, oh, unlawful possession with a firearm, 5 to 10 years, right? And then the man didn't even do anything. Didn't wave it at anybody, didn't kill anybody, nothing. Got pulled over for didn't use his turn signal, or, you know, the car is suspended because, again, you're dealing with people who are living in poverty, you know what I mean? So they got ticketed, or they didn't pay the meter or something like that, so they get pulled over. The cop goes, I smell weed. No, the fuck you don't. Oh, I smell weed. The cop searches the car. Bam. There's the freaking illegal firearm that you're not supposed to have because it's the city of New York. And even though you live in a high crime area, we don't care. This is associated with drugs, violence, and crimes and gangs. And so therefore, you're guilty for screw all this. The what do you call that shit? Screw all the circumstantial situation, and you know, just screw all that. Right? We're not taking any of that into factor. We're going to throw you in the jail just like you're a murderer or a rapist or whatever, all because of the situation that America has created and stuffed black people in, and black people have been in since the goddamn 40s. Okay? like this is literally what happens. And what do black people do? Black people sit right over the mayor's shoulder, you know, and just co-sign it and just, oh yes, sign that law into bill, right? And it's usually black women standing there. Yes, sign it into law. And guess whose son's getting locked up and thrown in jail? That's right, they black ass son. Then they sitting there boo-hooing and everything else like that. Instead of talking about jobs and economics. I see more black people up there talking about gun control than talking about jobs and economics and opportunities and things of that nature. You know, and this is where we are. You know, so again, I got to get on my soapbox and I got to talk to black people anytime I get a chance to talk to black people. But again, this video is mainly about the Supreme Court and the very nasty and ugly precedent that the Supreme Court is setting up for, you know, for future cases. So basically, they're literally going to allow New York to play with the Supreme Court, because that's what they're doing, and everybody sees it. I mean, if who's the Supreme Court Justice Roberts, if he's so concerned about the reputation of the Supreme Court and appearances and how it looks, and you know, it's not about politics and this, that, and the third. Well, you need to take a good look at this case and a good look at the way that New York is literally trying to play the Supreme Court. Y'all should be offended at that. And not only that, the consequences should be stiff and the consequences should be severe. And you know, I mean, there should be a punitive judgment, not just oh, okay, you know, we're gonna look at the case or whatever. No, it should be punitive. It needs to whatever judgment is cast down by the Supreme Court. If it's in gun rights favor, it should have teeth in it, because there's nothing stopping any not just New York, but any of these liberal states, you know, from continuing to engage in the tyranny in which they engage in when it comes to the Second Amendment. Just blanket bans, blanket denials of people, bullshit like justifiable need and good cause, which was specifically put in place in the 60s to deny black people access to the Second Amendment. That shit wasn't for white people. That shit happened in the 60s when JFK and Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy got killed. You know, and there was a whole bunch of, you know, assassinations and shit. They put that stuff in place. You had white flight, you had the black riots and whatnot. And then after that, they started locking black people up, slapping them with felonies, basically denying black people the Second Amendment rights. In my opinion, when it comes to nonviolent felon, there needs to be a path for people to get their rights back. That's a whole different video, but there needs to be a path for people to get their rights back. You know what I mean? Because what these police officers doing, they're going out here slapping, Jamal with 19 with a marijuana charge, and then when he's, 30, 32, and he has got a family, and he goes to get a firearm to protect his family. Oh, you got a drug charge. So because he had a little bit of weed on him, all of a sudden he's the biggest, marijuana junkie in the world, right? Even though we already know that all them white people back in the 60s, back in Woodstock, was smoking all the weed in the world, and some of them are today's CEOs and top executives. But, if Jamal smokes weed at 19, he's never going to amount to anything because he smoked marijuana. When all the white people and whose parents I went to high school with, all of them was smoking all type of weed. They was doing weed, LSD, mushrooms and all type of psychedelic, exotic shit. But when it comes to the black guy smoke a little bit of weed and, oh shit, you're sorry, you lose your rights, you lose the right to vote, you lose the right to even better yourself and get federal loans for college so that you can go to school and get an education. Does that make any sense? And then white people, the white conservatives want to sit there and they want to wonder why we got high rates of recidivism, or which means, people go to jail, get out of jail, and go back into jail. On top of the fact that whenever you go and you apply for a job application or whatever, that shit sits right there on your record, and then the white people who control the economical or the job hierarchy won't hire your ass. And then they wonder why the black community looks the way that it does. And then they wonder why you got all the violence and shit in Camden and Patterson and Newark and why you have gangs. And then they want to wonder why, right? It's so irritating, the intellectual dishonesty and the maintenance of white supremacy, and then people want to act and play dumb. It's so irritating, But again, as black people, when you live in a nation that this is how you're being treated, why, as the only black people on planet Earth that can walk into a store and say, I want that firearm to defend and protect myself, not just from the criminals in my own community, but against these damn white supremacists, you want to give that up and throw that away? What sense does that make? What sense does that make? And again, if it was anything else, I'm telling you, if they came out and they said, oh, black people, you can't have this, black people will be marching in the street. But all they got to do is come with some backdoor way of denying black people access to, oh, well, you have to have good cause or justifiable need, which, again, is directed towards us. Or, oh, well, you have to pay such and such a fees that we already know that you don't have because you're black and you're poor. And we put you in those economic circumstances of prolonged exposure to poverty and generational financial deficit. Right? And so we know that you don't have $500 for a permit. So, we're going to make sure that you don't get it. And again, as though the real criminals in the black community would ever just walk into a police station and go through a background check so that they can apply for a concealed carry permit. No, the black people who are being denied the concealed carry permits are the black people who just so happen to live in those poor neighborhoods and would be the first check on the black criminals in the black community, so that ironically they don't spill into the white community, so the white people can't say, oh, see, listen to what the niggers do and they commit crime and blah 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 blah. So the black people in the black community can't even check the other black people, right? On top of the lack of economic opportunities there. So then again, they fall victim to the people in their own community. Hence why white people keep running around screaming black on black violence. But then you got Colin Flattery making stupid ass videos as though white people are targeted when you just got finished saying, oh, there's so much black on black violence. Well, again, if there's so much black on black violence, well, I guess you was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nobody's sitting there riding around just targeting white people for the sake, oh, they're white or whatever. But again, he wants to push this type of narrative, which creates more animosity, creates more, screwed up racist policies that disproportionately affect black people, which only further exacerbate the law and further exacerbate the overall percentage of crime that takes place, and much of which ends up spilling even further back into the white community like a goddamn tsunami. So I'm like, so you're really not trying to fix the problem. You're just trying to keep the whole thing going. So that way you can use black people as a scapegoat and say, oh well, give me more power because I'm the one that can keep the blacks in check. Give me more power, right? And that's Southern strategy all day. That's conservative, right-wing, Republican strategy all day. So again, black people getting fucked from both sides, right? The Republicans, we got to build more prisons and whatnot. And then the Democrats, we got to pass more gun control laws to lock more black people up and charge them with these, unfair laws. But we're going to make sure that they don't have the economic resources. They're not going to the best schools. They're not getting any job opportunities and whatnot. And then everybody's sitting there complaining that, what's wrong with the black people. Anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. New Jersey gun laws out.